All right. Welcome, Veronica. I'm so glad you're here with me today to kind of share a little bit about your experience transitioning into UX. Why don't you introduce yourself and kind of set the scene for us? Kind of what were you doing? Where were you before you even learned kind of like what UX design was?
Yeah, definitely. So I learned about UX design, I want to say in 2019. I had been working in retail, like at a skincare company, and I wanted something more creative to do because I went to school for fashion design and I didn't really fit in or really enjoy that field. Um, and I just started seeing like UX design on TikTok, but before I even saw like Avocademy being advertised on TikTok. And then I went and bought a book like UX for Dummies, and I was like, let me see what this is about. And I really I started just like thumbing through it. I never like really opened it and like deeply read into it. But I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. And then in the past, I've had like made my own websites before, like using like Wix or like Shopify, and I really liked doing that. And then the pandemic happened, and that's kind of when I was just like over working in retail, wanted something like really creative, something that I was passionate about. So I started seeing Avocademy on TikTok, and I was like, I'm just gonna go for it. And I did foundations, and I did that like while I was working pretty much full time, and I really enjoyed it. And then like right after, I did CJ, and now I'm here in a job finally.
Nice. So you were working in retail. Um, I love that you went the book approach. It's actually the first, I've done like almost 25, 30 of these. It's the first time I hear someone bought a book to figure out if it's for them. So I love that. So you bought this book, you started seeing our ads. Did you consider any other approaches to learning? Like, did you consider self-learning? Did you consider like a university like degree, like a master's, or like any other boot camp? Like, kind of what was your decision making process before you were like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do Avocademy's foundation program?
Yeah, I looked everywhere really. Like I started looking into first I looked at university programs. So and I was like I saw the price tag and I was like, no, I already have student loan debts. I don't want to do that. I did think about self-teaching at first, like especially when I had the book and I was like going on YouTube. But once I was reading into it, I was like, there's so much more that like I don't think I would be able to figure out my and like find myself. And especially because my main goal was like, I want to work in this field. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get from point A to point B. And then I started looking up boot camps, especially once I saw like Avocademy on TikTok, and then I started looking at a bunch of other boot camps and kind of just like comparing. But when I found Avocademy and like seeing all the ads and everything, I was like, this sounds like the perfect fit. I started reading like the comments and like looking it up everywhere, and like I really liked what I saw. So that's really how I like came to my decision.
Nice. And when was this? Just so we have like an overall timeline. Like, when did you start foundations?
This was February 2022.
Okay, so a little bit over a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, cool. So you started foundations. How did you feel going through foundations? So we know you finished and did CJ, but like,
Yeah.
what was your experience during foundations? At any point where you like, I don't know, like maybe I don't like this or I
Yeah.
don't like this aspect of it. Like, what was that experience like?
I really enjoyed it. Like, I felt like I had a really positive experience with it. I think there were points when I was like getting more into like the research part where I was like, oh, I don't know, like, do I think enough? Like, am I a critical thinker enough to be doing this? So maybe like a little self doubt more than anything, where I was like, I don't think like I'm smart enough to do this right now. Um, but I really enjoyed it. It did take me a little bit longer to finish foundations just because my retail job, like I basically went from being part time to being thrown into full time. So it started to get a little hard to juggle and balance. But I think like I was still like so committed to just wanting to get it done with. And like I was really excited about the foundations project that I did too, because it was like something more personal to me. So I really enjoyed the entire foundations course.
Nice. Yeah, we've recently restructured foundations so that I think before we had like this 8 week timeline that I think
Mhm.
created a lot of pressure on folks to
Yeah.
like I have to finish in this timeline. So we've extended it to 16 weeks. So now we
Oh,
have like actual full 16 weeks of mentorship. and like a little bit of a less time commitment, 10-ish hours a week to finish within those 16
Oh, that's
weeks,
awesome. Yeah.
to allow for a little bit of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that up. Cool. So you finished foundations. Did you see that like a lot of your skills from either like your retail experience or your education kind of were applicable to what you were learning, and maybe you were just learning like new terminology or like, oh, okay, yeah, I've done that before, but we just
Yeah,
call it here, like call it this here and things like that.
definitely. Especially from like, because I got a BA in fashion design and pattern making is like very technical. So a lot of the terminology was either the same or just like a little bit different, but had the same meaning. And I feel like both my schooling and working in retail both really helped because like from the retail side, I had like a lot of empathy already like towards customers and hearing their pain points and just like dealing with people and like wanting to help fix their problems. And then just like from the design aspect too, I feel like having kind of more of like a technical design background really helped. It made me a little bit more conscious and like meticulous and like paying attention to details a lot more. And like consistency was like a big thing that I was always like ingraining into my head and like trying to do when I was making my project. But yeah, I really feel like they both helped. And it really, I just felt like with fashion, it was like I couldn't really be creative like the way that I thought I would be able to be when I had a job there. And so I feel like I found the perfect balance with UX design because it's like I have the creativity, I have the detail, and I know that I'm helping someone as well. So I kind of feel like this is my experience, my background, like melded into the perfect thing and like manifested into UX design.
Yeah, no, that's great. What did you do your foundations project in, if you don't mind
Yeah.
sharing? Yeah.
So I did mine on like helping women who have endometriosis and PCOS because it's something that I suffer from. And there's like no information really. There's so much, either there's so much information that it's like overwhelming, or it's a
Mhm.
lot of like repetitive stuff or maybe things that aren't like scientifically backed. So I wanted to kind of try and make like a little safe space to give like advice, to give medical help as well, like natural remedies or like actual prescribed remedies, and kind of making like a chat room for women to talk to one another because I feel like so many people are either like embarrassed to talk about it or don't know much about it. But yeah, that's what I did mine on. I really, really love that project.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that you picked something that was like personal to you and you like actually enjoyed and love
Yeah,
it. Sometimes people pick some topics and by the end of it, they're like, "Damn, I really should have picked something else. This is not it, you know?" So I love that you mentioned that you enjoyed it. Cool. So you finished foundations. Around what time did you start CJ? Do you remember?
I think I started CJ October
Cool.
2022.
Awesome. So you start CJ in October. Walk me through kind of like your experience. How many projects did you do? Were there any like nightmare scenarios in your projects? We know that that happens, especially when you're like getting experience working with like other designers and
Yeah.
like clients and all of that. So, what were your projects? How was that experience of like
Yeah.
working with real clients?
CJ was really good. Ended up doing four. No, I ended up doing three CJ projects. The first one was probably the most difficult just because like it was supposed to be for like a Chrome extension. And just like the team that I worked with was awesome. We were all like super collaborative. We like helped each other as much as we could. But it was the first time dealing with like a developer, and like the developer was also the person who like this was his company as well. So it was like his baby. So we had to definitely learn a lot about like compromising and kind of like fighting for like design decisions and just being like, okay, I know you want this, but in my right mind, I can't let that happen, or like I can't let that go.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, I think that was the most difficult one. The second one was the e-commerce company for like hair care. So that one was really cool. I think that one really helped set me up for my job today too, because it's the e-commerce platform. That one, the client was like a dream. He liked everything that we did. So we were like, okay, good. And then the last one I did was like for a like AI chatbot startup. That one was really cool too. I got a lot of like user research. Like I got a lot of experience in that, which I really appreciated because that's something that I did want to focus on. And I took on the third project while I was going through applying to jobs, just because like I feel like during the time I started applying to jobs from March to August, and I feel like it was like such a hard time during there. It was just like super slow. So I was like, well, let me just do another project. And I feel like that project, once I added that to my portfolio, I started getting a ton more traction, and I started interviewing and actually got my job while I was still finishing up that project. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. I liked the mentorship. I liked working with people as well. Like working with the team was the best part to me.
Yeah, and you got like a very kind of varied experience in those projects, which is great. Because like I know you said the first one was the hardest, but working with directly with a developer is like really important. And I'm sure you had questions about, I'm sure that project helped you answer interview questions about a difficult time and how do you work with developers and all those questions. So you worked on a Chrome extension, e-commerce, and then you worked on chat. So like you touched a lot of different areas. Which is awesome. And I love that you mentioned that third project, you know, helped you get a little bit more traction, because right now we're like pushing current CJ students to do third and fourth projects so that they can get more experience. Were you a lead on your last project?
I wasn't.
Okay. But it still gave you good. Yeah, that's awesome.
And especially too, because I had done like a side gig for a family friend. Like I redesigned his website, and I know I had you like look it over for me to make sure it was like even presentable for my portfolio.
Yeah.
So like I ended up having, I think, like 5 projects in total in my portfolio, and that helped a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we're definitely trying to get folks to like put more projects on their portfolio so they really stand out. I think like traditional boot camps, you do like these like 3 little fake projects and then like go, right? And here you're doing like your first project that looks different for everyone, because you get to pick your problem and foundations, and then you have all these different client projects you can put on there. So that's awesome. Tell me a little bit about the job search. So we know, you know, it's obvious that we're like in a little bit of a harder job market period, not only for UX, but for everything in the world right now, or in the US at least. The economy is not great, you know, so with the job market's definitely changed from what it was a couple of years ago. So tell me a little bit about kind of like your experience applying to jobs, emotionally, if you feel like sharing what that was like. And yeah, anything around the job search process would be helpful.
So in all, I think it took me 5 months to get my job. I guess like the #1 reason I was stressing during the period of time is because I was like, I need to do it before September. Like that was the date where I needed to secure a job. I would say it was like some days I was like, okay, I got this, I can do it. And other days I was like, oh my God, like if I get an interview, I don't know what I'm gonna say. Then I think like I don't know what I'm doing. The main like stressor I think too was like I had got invited on a trip, and so I went to the trip, and where I went it was out of the country, so I didn't have any internet access. So every day I was like not even enjoying myself. I'm just like, oh my God, like I can't get my applications in, what's gonna happen? And once I got back home, I kind of just like re-strategized and like kind of like give myself a prep talk every morning, and I like gave myself a number. So I was like, okay, every day I want to apply to at least 25 to 35 jobs. And like, I would feel good about myself. And even if I was getting rejections, I didn't care. I was like, whatever, like I'm getting experience answering like the resume questions, or I'm figuring out like which resume works better. I ended up having like 3 different resume templates. And I think the 2-page one is what ended up getting me the most interviews, which I wasn't sure about, but I remember like we had like a town hall in CJ, and I feel like that meeting really like I took notes and like I applied every single change that was mentioned. And that was my main thing. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I trust everything that you're telling us. So I was like, whatever they say, I'm just gonna do it. And it worked. But yeah, it was definitely like kind of like a imposter syndrome, emotional roller coaster. Like I'd be so down some days. And I would like be like, it's not gonna happen. And my mom would be like talking me off from the ledge. And like the next day I'm like, I got an interview.
it's definitely all over the place. It's definitely a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
Like you one day you're like, I got this, I have three, you're like, I'm overwhelmed, I have four interviews, and then the next day you're like, I got, many
Yeah.
rejections, and you're like down again. You mentioned that every morning you set like a goal for yourself, and you mentioned like a high number of daily
Yeah.
applications. A lot of people, when they're considering this, they're like, 200 applications a month is like, and I'm saying a random number, but like
Mhm.
200 applications a month is like so many applications. There's no way I could ever do that. And I think for people that are younger and are just coming out of college, like that's the norm. Like if you're a
Yeah.
senior in college, like you're applying to hundreds and hundreds of jobs. It's just like
Definitely.
how it is these days.
Yeah, it's
And
like
I
just
think
literally.
for folks maybe in other careers, like in retail or in education, where you just like apply and you get the first job you apply to,
Mhm.
like you just show up to like a mall and like
Yeah.
you will get a job that day if you just fill out some applications.
Right.
Like it's very different to understand that like right now in the job market you have to apply to hundreds of jobs, even if you're a senior, you're a junior. Like it's just kind of like what it's evolved to.
Yeah.
um so that feels like a lot. Tell me a little bit about, like you said, 20, 25 applications a day. Like how long would that take you? Or did you get into like a group of things? I know we share some like plugins and things to like
Yeah.
get you to do things faster, but like approximately how long would that take
It took a
you per day?
while. Cause I would usually start around like 8:30 in the morning. And I think maybe like I would be going until like sometimes 2 o'clock at the latest, I think. So it would definitely take a few hours. And then I started like the more I started applying, I did start using different plugins. I hated using Workday, so like I would just like try and use plugins for that as much as possible because some like of the
Yeah.
job sites are like a headache to fill out. But the plugins did help. Like I think I could start to get maybe like three done in like 45 minutes or an hour.
Yeah.
And then like because I know we had to stop doing like easy apply too, which was like really beneficial in my experience, I think. Um, so it definitely took some time, but I was so determined. I was like, I don't care how long it takes, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, I think it definitely takes time, but once you get into the groove of things and you start seeing like those interviews roll in, there's a little bit of more of like a
Yeah.
hopefulness kind of on on the other side. But awesome. Share a little bit about where you're at now. So you found a job.
Yeah.
How do you like it? Is it what you expected, not what you expected? How's your life changed, if any?
Yeah. So I work now at Proactive, the skincare company. It's a hybrid role in Santa Monica. So one of my goals was I'm from Los Angeles originally, and I had moved to the desert with my family, and I was like, I want to get back to LA. Like, I want to be able to move out and like live on my own or with someone. So that was like checked off already. I was like, okay, cool, good, I got that. Um, the job for this one, or like finding the job, was awesome. I actually got the job through a recruiting agency. And when I talked to the recruiter, I applied, and then I think like within 5 minutes, she emailed me back. And I didn't know that it was for Proactive at first. And she was like, oh, like these people really want someone who has like skincare experience or retail experience. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, okay, I have that. And she was like, I didn't think I'd be able to find anyone that had that experience. So she was like, she set up an interview with me right away. Like she and I had a screener. And then like within the next week, I had 3 interviews, two with two project managers who are now like my boss, and then one with like someone on the marketing team. And just even like the interview process was really good. It was different from all the other interviews I had. Like everyone was like very comfortable, super like approachable and friendly, and like very just like transparent and honest, which I really liked. And then I think like a week and a half after that, they sent me my offer letter and I started. And it's been really good. I'm a UX designer. I'm their first UX designer. So I'm kind of like learning how to be trusting like my intuition and trusting like my design decisions a little bit more. And they're kind of like, they lean on me a lot, which I didn't expect them to just be like, oh yeah, like sure, whatever you say. So that's been a little bit interesting. Like sometimes I'll have like tasks to do and I'm like searching like, is this the best practice? Does this work? Just to make sure like what I'm saying, like I can speak to it and I know it's gonna be okay. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I do work with a lot of developers too. There's like a team of 10 developers, and I get to talk to them a lot. They're super like approachable and friendly too. Like we even collaborate sometimes. Like we're trying to revamp their website, and like their landing page right now is the biggest thing. Everyone's like super open to like making changes, so it's been really good so far. I really like it.
Nice. Yeah, that experience working with that developer client came in handy for,
exactly.
for the job. That's awesome. I love that like it was literally your retail like, you know, beauty experience that like was what got you this job. I think a lot of people are worried like I'm not a graphic designer, right? Like I don't have like a design education, like I'm never going to be able to find a job. And then it's like it's this like unrelated experience in like an industry that helps you kind of land the job you landed. So I love that. I'm very happy for you. I'm so glad that you were able to move, you know, to the LA area for the role. I feel like things kind of just like perfectly aligned for you. I feel like sometimes, you know, your job search took a little bit, right? And like during that moment, it feels like it's never going to happen, you know, like how many applications am I going to have to submit? And then after the fact, looking at it, right? Like when I talk to y'all, you're like, yeah. And then a week later, I got this job. But like during that week, you know, y'all are like messaging us like, I'm not going to have a job. I need a job, right? So I love kind of hearing this side, which is like, and then I got the job and now I'm, you know, I'm in LA and it's great. So that's awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Like, is there any, you know, typically how we end this is I ask you if there's any like advice you would give yourself right before you decided to make this decision. What would you tell yourself or someone that's currently kind of thinking about going through this process?
I would say absolutely go for it. Absolutely do it, because the way that I was thinking about it, I was like, well, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? Like, just go for it. I feel like I waited till I was so unhappy with what I was doing that I was just like, that was my main motivating force. So for me, that's like, it worked in my benefit because I was like, okay, like I want to get away from what I'm doing to go towards something else. So use anything as like your motivation just to pursue what you want to do. And I feel like now looking back, don't be so hard on yourself. I like would beat myself up so much and be like, oh, you didn't like make your application goal today. Like it's not going to happen now. Like it doesn't work like that. Just like continuing to like set your goals, continuing to just try and be as positive as possible and allowing yourself to have days where you don't feel so great. But I just think absolutely just go for it, because you don't want to look back and be like, oh, I wish I would have done that. And just doing as much as like interview prep as possible. I watch so many YouTubes, even just like a bunch of like day of my life for like UX designers, or like a bunch of interview prep videos. All of like the mentor videos I would watch on Avocademy. Like I was just trying to absorb as much information as possible. But yeah, I would say that's my main advice.
Awesome. Thank you. Super appreciate you joining me today and sharing your story.
Thank you so much.